It's from last time.
Roll call.
Cabrera,
Aye.
Tainter, Wadzak.
Aye.
So the minutes of last month were adopted. So moving on to all business, and the topic for that is going to be investigation of residential parking permit program for Central Brisbane. So in the agenda on this topic, what we're going to have is a very productive meeting that we had with Commander Garcia and staff. The members of staff was Randy, Tomas, Karen, and also the supervisor, I forgot his name.
City Manager Holstein.
Thank you. And also Angie, we also have Consul Colleen. It's a very productive meeting. So, what staff has done, because, this is a pretty comprehensive project, they wanted to provide a system where we will narrow down the options, mainly targeting the enforcement perspective component of this program. So we're going to, talk about what transpired in that meeting and share that, with the rest of the committee. Can you put that flow chart on? There you go. So if you want also walk you through, Karen, on this flow chart.
On the flow chart, you're saying?
Yes.
So we started off the meeting and, as I said at the last committee meeting, we were concerned that we had developed now or had uncovered maybe 6 options based on where the whole discussion had started. If you include all of Central Brisbane or just targeted streets in the program, and the 3 different ways that that enforcement could happen that we talked about at the last meeting. And there was some confusion when staff tried to explain it, and there was a discussion about doing a flow chart. So we made a couple of flow charts, and we brought those to the meeting with the one council liaison that was able to come. And we didn't really even get all the way through the flow charts, but we got the general concept that it's more pricey to use a consultant. It's pricey to use a license plate reader system. There isn't very much cost to have existing police staff do enforcement on a complaint basis as they can get to the complaints, which isn't every day at the same time like a consultant would be, or a contractor, I guess I should say. But cost less, and generally, I don't know if Commander Garcia, when he wants to jump in, or if he does right now, can get to most of those complaints and do serve a lot of complaints as it is now. So we got feedback that the interest was to carve out the ones that were more expensive and bring forward the ones that cost less. So I don't even think we showed both of the flow charts. We only showed Central Brisbane, but there's a similar flow chart for the targeted streets. It's cheaper by using a contractor, but otherwise it's fairly similar to this. So, I mean, I can explain what's in the flow chart, but we kind of eliminated a lot of it at this meeting with the liaison. In terms of what Councilmember Mackin said she feels would be palatable to the full council and what she wants us to bring forward, to be more focused and to have a productive discussion at the council level. So the interest is very strongly to use displayed permits, do a complaint-based program, and consider the fact that we could add on an enforcement piece by a contractor in the future, and keep it simple and keep it cheap in the beginning. So is that really addressing what you wanted, Christian? I could go through the flow chart more, but I think you guys generally know that hiring another staff person or hiring a contractor costs the $120,000 or $140,000 a year. Plus, if we want to use a license plate reader system, which is faster and more efficient, that also has a lot of costs associated with it.
No, I mean, that's very good. So you hit the main point. So once they got, they got presented with this flow chart, which simplifies a lot of the options. That so as Karen mentioned, Council Colleen wanted to lean to something that is most cost effective for the current budget of the city. So the idea now is to they're inclining to push forward with the Brisbane Police Department to enforce it, and then for the residents, to basically call in and that. So that's a difference if you compare it to the third party that we were going to, that we also presented to hire last, that they will have a patrol vehicle circulating the Brisbane streets, and then based on their technology, since it's a license plate reader, they will know if somebody doesn't have a permit, and then they will get ticketed. So this approach is less aggressive, is cheaper. The difference, is instead of hiring and Commander Garcia could speak more in that regard, but instead of hiring a full-time employee just to do that, they're going to. The understanding is based on the demand on the calls right now, that we're going to roll it out as in central Brisbane, and it's going to be enforced by the Brisbane Police Department, and there's no anticipation that there's going to be a lot of calls.
My understanding was that we're still going to bring forward two options to look at targeted streets or to look at all of central Brisbane. Let the council discuss that. And
yeah, I guess maybe, I thought the request was still to sort of have maybe a sort of top level, what would be the least expensive option, and then build upon that so they can kind of see the breakdown where, leave it up to them whether it be central versus all of Brisbane, and then, least enforcement, then what next would be, what the next most be, kind of still show the research we did and show that, the contract enforcement is cost prohibitive at the bottom. And that would be the most, all the bells and whistles, and you kind of build upward and see, and they can kind of say, okay, yeah, this is where we want to stop, or maybe it's just the minimal, maybe it's just printed, maybe it's, this is minimal cost, that kind of breakdown of sort of both options, central. And I'd also I'm not sure if this was, my takeaway is also that maybe the streets that are signed here are maybe not the necessarily, or it was sort of, maybe there was a proposition to sort of have a by street or sort of a by zone decision on the enforcement, or who would participate in that as well. Karen, do you want to maybe comment on that piece of it?
I mean, it kind of is wide open in a sense. My notes said that the city engineer could send out a survey, and that's right. He mentioned do a 3-block area at a time. I'm not sure what he had in mind, and I guess we need to figure that out. But it was zones that would be at a minimum 3 blocks.
Yeah. So I guess part of the question was if there were this survey to send out to residents of zones, that you could send out to everyone, and then if a zone of say 3 blocks agreed, say 50%, then they could have a permit, but it doesn't necessarily have to be the entire street. So there's maybe some idea around zones that are interested by a vote, or some sort of, I don't know if vote's not the right word, whatever, some sort of, response.
That's a good point, and I did not get everything in notes, but the ordinance now is 70%, so that would be another recommendation to council is, are you willing to take a majority, a simple majority, versus what the ordinance says it's 70%?
Yeah, so just wanted to clarify some point, and then we could have Pat, he has a question. So there was discussion about this is going to be one of those things that the decision has not been finalized. That was just the conversation that we had with one of the consuls, and as a matter of fact, two of them needed to be there, but just one of them attended. And then this is going to also another component of this of narrowing down this all the different decision was how we're going to draft the report. But definitely, there was a lot of conversation in terms of phasing it out. There was discussion about the target street. And as we have discussed before that some of those, if you do target street, some of those cars could spill to the other. So it might just make sense to do it in, central Brisbane. So I just wanted to, to provide that caveat that this is an open discussion and what would this discussion will serve. So can we get your questions now, Pat?
Thank you. I do have a couple questions, and it's more upon the side of the BP enforcement side of the flow chart, specifically on the displayed permit based. So we see, I guess, Brisbane Police believes they could handle the complaints with existing staff and your current time demand of officers and such. Is that correct?
Yeah, we could, and I did speak to Colleen, Councilmember Mackin, and that we would be able to do it with the current staffing as long as the expectation of enforcement was not immediate in terms of what we do now. Right now, our response time within most calls are 6 minutes. On this type of enforcement, it would have a caveat of a leeway of between 24 to 48 hours, depending on when we can get to it. And that was generally the consensus that she was okay with that, only because, the program is meant to flush vehicles out. So if a vehicle is going to keep coming and parking in the streets without permits, we're going to get it one way or another sooner or later. So as these, whether we're there within 6 minutes or we're there within 10 hours, that vehicle is potentially still be there. So yes, with that caveat, we could handle the enforcement. And that was one of the discussions was, if the program did start picking up to where we were getting an influx of calls where maybe we weren't getting to all of them, then at that point, whether this would be a 6 months or a year down the line when everybody had permits, that's kind of where they focused on, well, then we can add these enforcement pieces on. Then we can bring in a contractor that could be now roving if it turned that way. But the initial discussion was maybe this was more of an, we'll get people inventoried, see who really belongs here, what vehicles are supposed to be here. If you have 5 drivers, 5 cars, we can kind of start fleshing this stuff out on an initial rollout, and then we can go build upon it.
Councilmember Mack
Okay.
thought that the complaints would.
Yeah, she felt that it would just drop, as things settled out. So
Okay.
we could definitely handle it that way.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Additional question I had on that. It shows a $5,000 one-time cost for the program management. I assume that's the permitting.
Yeah, that's IPS. We keep forgetting what that stands for. Integrated Parking Services. But yeah, that's IPS.
And then what's the ongoing cost of that? Or does that become city managed?
Yeah, it becomes once they have it set up for us, then the staff would be managing it once the initial setup is complete.
Okay, thank you.
So that's a good point, and those are good questions, Pat. So I think that's a good clarification from Commander Garcia, because just going back, so what's on the table is the police department is going to enforce it. The cities, the system itself is going to be a display permit complaint base. What that means is depending, if we go with targeted street or central Brisbane, they're going to have some sort of a permit sticker in their car, and that could, take different shapes. and then other residents are going to be able to have the queue and make the decision if that car, doesn't belong to Brisbane, and then make that phone call. And, if we go with Central Brisbane, as Commander Garcia was saying, we just have to be a little patient because if there's like a lot of calls and they're involving other things, they're not going to get it right away. But nevertheless, the consensus in the room is the main goal is to start weeding out those bad actors, so eventually that objective, is going to, the feeling was that it's going to be served going through that approach. And going a little more into the initial setup and what that database and how is that going to be run. Do you have more information about that, Thomas or Karen?
Well, we had sent you there was a demo video, right? And there was the website of Integrated Parking Services. They're also collecting the revenue from issuing the permit, which when I first made contact with them, they said is $20 if someone uses a credit card and if they have to mail a permit. So if it was an online application, license plate reader, I think it was $10 or $12. But if it's going to be displayed, something they have to mail out, and somebody wanted to use a credit card as opposed to, I don't know, a debit card or sending a check, or I don't know what the options are. The highest it was $20. So and that was assuming an annual permit. So they collect that amount also. But they basically set up a database, and it's got to be someone else on staff that says, yes, the boxes are checked, issue that permit, and then they'll mail it out. They have a piece, they can track enforcement. We haven't looked into what the cost is with that and if that's something that we want to have, but, we explored if there was a license plate reader system. That was another way that we thought it could be cheap, is that police department staff or existing code enforcement staff, if we used a license plate reader system, they could drive the streets. All they'd have to do is drive by at a certain speed, and that information would be digitally collected, and Integrated Parking Services would have the ability to mail out citations. So it's quick. But nobody's doing that yet, and Brisbane's not interested in being on the cutting edge of doing things that way.
Okay. I have some more questions.
Oh, go ahead, Matt.
Obviously the cost of the BPD enforcement with the displayed permit is obviously extremely attractive compared to the other costs. So I'm wondering how exactly would this work then? With the license plate reader, there was sort of a grace period. They'd make the first pass, see a license plate without or detect a license plate without a permit, and then when they came back the next day or whatever, if that vehicle was still there, a citation could be issued. Is that how it would work on the complaint-based, or would it be immediate that if a vehicle was seen to be parked and the enforcement officer then responded and was there and saw no permit, would a citation be issued immediately, or how would that process function?
Right. So it would be immediate if we were to get out there and the vehicle was still there. When we delay, I'm not delay, but when we don't get there immediately, that affords the person to be there an hour and they didn't get a ticket because they were just dropping something off or coming to say hello and then they're on their way. We get there, they're gone, no big deal. Okay. If it was, if we were promising within a response time within 6 minutes, then they're going to get tickets immediately because we don't have the bandwidth to come back an hour later or 20 minutes later, whatever. We set the guidelines to say, hey, you're still here. So, the fact that we don't get there right away kind of affords that issuance. So of giving them, the leeway of being there for a little bit. Okay. So even if we did there's some cities where you call into a hotline of, whether it's a vehicle abandoned or no permit. Generally, these hotlines are not answered. They're an answering machine, and then they get there the next day. Again, the next day, that car may be gone because it was only there for 30 minutes. So it kind of gives that ability to give someone a warning, or just if they're not going to be a long-term issue of non-permitted, no harm, no foul. They're gone the next day. So.
Thank you.
It did elicit further discussion and feedback from Councilmember Mackin about a couple of things. How many permits we issue. She wanted us to bring some options for guest parking that we talked about. We got to talk about the blocking the driveway, but that's last. So when we talked about the time too, and the consideration was to go back to midnight to 5 a.m. being not the time of enforcement, but the time that you can park without
Without a permit. So yeah, I think the conversation where.
or no, you had to have a permit to be parked at that time.
Correct. So if we had set the permit enforcement times within, let's say, 10 to 6 a.m., if you're having dinner guests over and they happen to hang over till midnight, where they're going to start getting dinged at 10 a.m. But if you made it later to where, some guests stay till 11:30, midnight, but they don't stay until 2. So if you put it out to 1 a.m., well, if they're at 1 a.m., they're going to be there at 6 a.m. Generally. They're not, most parties don't go that late. But they want to try to build that in so that someone could have a guest over. And so moving the timeline to enforcement between midnight or whatever the committee decides, to recommend, then that would be considered.
Let me also add on, Councilmember Mackin suggested that what was proposed to council was 1 driver, 1 car, 1 permit. So if you have a household of 5, everyone gets a permit. If you have a household of 2, everyone gets a permit. Or, we talked about the option with the floating guest permits. We talked about some of the drawbacks of that you have to have a guest permit system. And then if you have an emergency, then you might get a ticket and you have to appeal that. And everyone sort of seemed okay with that kind of formula.
Could you explain that again, the 1 driver, 1 car basis?
Yeah. Like I said, if this is a multi-generational household kind of situation, if there are 6 adult drivers and 6 different cars, they should each get a permit at her suggestion. If there are 4 adult drivers and 6 cars, 4 permits for that household.
What about people who have like a work vehicle? Let's just take 1 person, 2 cars. Let's take that, a simple case where 1 is a personal car, 1 is a work vehicle or a company-provided vehicle that isn't allowed for personal use. How would that?
Daria seems to want to speak, but I don't think that there was a lot of
Yes,
interest in
Darius,
storing work vehicles on the allowing people to store their work vehicles on the street.
She seemed pretty clear to suggest that it should be for Brisbane sort of residents explicitly, and that the car should be registered to Brisbane, and also the driver should be registered here, right? And then any exception outside of that could be handled by sort of, on an exception basis, but there probably would be very few exceptions like that, given the sort of, scope of the town. But again, that sort of was a recommendation, and I think, yeah.
So I guess that where I'm headed on this, a work vehicle is not necessarily a giant truck. It could be a sedan or an SUV that's a leased vehicle for a salesperson, say. But IRS tax laws, et cetera, can restrict the use of that such that you can't use it for personal use. You've got to have a separate vehicle potentially for your own personal use. And when you are working, you are able to use this work vehicle, even though it's just a regular sedan. And it might be, I've had these in past years, and I don't think it was registered in my name, even though it was registered in the name of the employer and the leasing company that provided it. This is potentially an issue, I think, or, it's a basis of someone's employment, and I think, a restriction that we need to figure out how to make that work.
Yes. So, that's a very good point, and there was, quite a bit of discussion about how many permit per household. And what Darius was saying, the idea is, and and I think that also comes to into content of, this, we're going to do this phase and we're going to learn from it, and then we're going to, there's going to be some adjustment down the road. But so in terms of, how many permit per household, the idea is for people that live in Brisbane to feel, that having, to feel belonging to the city and having a parking permit and not excluding anybody right now. Obviously, there might be capacity issues. Not every car is going to be permitted, but I think for the main phase, that's the thinking right now. But also, as we have been researching the different cities, we have seen different amounts that they have. Generally, I think a lot of them is 2 per household, and we're going to, put that in the report. But in terms of the conversation that went on in the meeting, that was the thinking. We also talk about lease vehicle or work vehicle, and those, like if it's a hybrid vehicle, it was totally acceptable to be to get a permit. What they sort of excluded is this oversized, vehicles, and I think there is a code that clearly indicates what is an oversized vehicle. And just to mention some of them, could be like a RV, a boat, a trailer, or like a semi wheel truck.
I would say, yeah, I agree with what you're saying, Christian, is that Councilmember Mackin did indicate each resident that had a vehicle should have a permit for the one vehicle. We didn't see very much. I don't know if we saw any other cities that specifically said you can have a second permit if you have a work vehicle. There are a couple other things to consider is your driveway and your garage don't require a permit. If you're a multi-family household, you may share that personal car. If you're talking about a couple, one may have a work vehicle and there be one personal vehicle that the 2 of them share. So if you're saying 2 adults with a work vehicle and 2 personal cars get 3 permits, that didn't seem to have traction with the liaison, Councilmember Mackin. But I mean, we can bring it up in the report for their discussion, but where do you draw that line? What if you have a multi-generational household with 3 or 4 work vehicles and personal vehicles? It's getting excessive,
Yeah, no, I mean, definitely. I think that conversation is going to keep on because, as we have had it among us and what we have seen from other cities, the way they manage the amount of permit, is different. But, once again, in terms of that meeting, I think that was the overall idea. Like, let's open it up for everybody in Brisbane to have a permit. But then, with the caveat, is it a lease vehicle? Is it a hybrid vehicle that you use for your company and it just has signs? And then you get into other things. Is it registered under your company and somebody else's address? But, some of the stuff I think we need to be a deal on their exception basis too. Any other questions? So just wanted to stay a little bit more on the company that is going to manage the database, because this company is going to work closely with Commander Garcia's department. So they're going to manage the program, right? Or you're going to have somebody from. Because my understanding, not necessarily this particular company, but from other cities, and also just my experience, from other vendors in Brisbane, like the one that I usually pay my business license to, they manage the whole thing. They have the application. They send me the my license, my business license, and et cetera. So if this companies manage the database, I think they're going to be issuing the permits. If somebody loses it, they're going to have to replace it, and there's going to be a methodology to do that, and also the application to get one. So they're going to run the program, or the expectation is to have somebody from the city running the program with them.
I mean, I think that it's kind of a handshake. They have the database, they mail the permits, but reviewing the application and checking, yes, they qualify, is going to be a staff, police department staff role. So they're not deciding who to give a permit to, but they are managing all that data really well.
So a question on that then, when it comes to the point of an officer has arrived at the vehicle, inspecting the permit, I assume that there would be a unique number on it, whether it's a decal or a hang tag. I imagine there would be a verification process that this permit number goes with this vehicle. Is that what would happen, or?
Correct. Much like your registration tabs that you get from DMV, that year tag that you get, there's a serial number that serial number is tied into your license plate. So this system, I would assume, works the same way. Your hang tag or your sticker may have 1, 2, 3, 4, but when we query that, it should come back to your plates because that driver was issued to that vehicle. So that's how we would verify that.
And then the police vehicles are equipped with whatever, I don't know, a smartphone or something to be able to query this database, do you think, or?
Correct. So
Okay.
Our digital enforcement cider is Turbo Data. They have modules that I believe we can purchase. And basically it's a smartphone like mine. It has a reader up front if we enabled it. That reader, we could scan over a license plate. If we were in the parking permit mode, it would read that plate, confirm it with the database in seconds and say, that should be 1, 2, 3, 4 permit. And that would match.
Okay.
So that's how it would be.
Thank you.
And that cost would be that more than 5,000, but maybe less than the 60,000 plate reader cost.
Oh, absolutely. Because that LPR is just to make our lives easier so that we wouldn't have to go back to our computers, query a number. It would literally just read it, compare it against the database and go, okay, this is the permit number you should look for. If it's there on the bumper, you're good.
Regarding, I guess one more thing I had not thought about before is regarding timing. That was kind of brought up. I'm not sure how that kind of goes forward, whether we recommend something, but if enforcement is only able to get there, say 24 to 48 hours, but permit parking is only between midnight and, whatever time, then a car that was parked there between that time could still be there during the day as long as it's not there at night. So it kind of depends on, there's a game there also with enforcement. Which I think is, something that someone should think about and we should note. I guess this would not count against sort of police enforcement's response time, though, would it? Because I'm assuming there's some metrics that you need to sort of usually have that 6-minute mark. This would not count against your sort of normal response.
No, it would not.
Yeah.
And again, we could have that night perfect culmination where someone calls that in, we're there within 30, 40 minutes. So, and then there's nights when there's only 2 officers and they're literally tied up at the jails, and there's one officer responding to other calls. Then at that time, we couldn't get to that until, maybe the next day. But then again, if this program is to weed out excess vehicles, that problem is still going to exist the next night. I guarantee it.
I have a question because that just pinged something in my mind. If someone called it in at 1 a.m., and then the officer is not able to get there until after the restricted parking hours have expired, issues a citation. Is the owner of the vehicle able to contest that in the sense that the officer did not directly witness the violation? Because when the officer visited, it was outside permit restricted hours.
Right. So the enforcement portion of that would have to be based on 2 things. It's we respond within the time period of the enforcement period, and that we can actually deliver that ticket within the enforcement period. we can't deliver it. Let's say it ends at 6, we can't deliver it at 7 a.m. It's over. At that point, that car gets another 24 hours, 12 hours at the guest until we get to the next day.
Okay.
And that's kind of the theory behind why we can't, or cities are not going towards LPR readers and just mailing citations out. Because someone can say, I wasn't there. And now we have to go and prove these things. So if we're literally delivering the ticket on your windshield, that vehicle was there. So that's kind of why that process has not gone through court yet.
Thank you.
I guess I don't have any questions. I guess my thought is just in terms of the next steps for us as a committee, sort of to deliver what that could look like. And I think the base structure and then sort of, the add-on features, or not features is the wrong word, but, sort of the add-ons. I guess how do we think about that next process, unless there's other discussion?
Sure. I think we are very close to diving into that discussion. How is all this going to play out in the near future? Let me ask a couple of more questions to Commander Garcia. I guess the one question that in my mind I was not clear, the database management role in terms of managing the program and the administrative work that is expected now from the Brisbane Police Department. So just thinking out loud here, we have those two options, targeted street versus central Brisbane. And once this program rolls out, you might get hit either with 100 people asking you for tickets, or if it's central Brisbane, we're looking at, 2,000, 3,000. So do you have the administrative FTE to support to carry on with those activities, or is that something that you would need to add on or something, or have a petition?
That would be the worst fear, is that if we implemented this program and maybe after a certain cutoff date where you try to get everybody to adhere to it, let's say you took 2 months for everybody to register, no one did, and now we're starting to get 200 calls, then we would cross that bridge when we get there and see how much we can get in that timeline. But to alleviate that what if, I think Councilmember Mackin said that this is going to be rolled out as everyone gets a permit. You get one car, one permit, and it will weed everything out. There may not be any calls after you set a certain expectation of the initial rollout, and then we don't get those calls. We don't know. That's the thing, is we don't know. But they want to come in this more at a low level, and then we can add. Obviously, if it consistently says 300 calls or 200 calls per month, then we are going to immediately come back and just have the discussion. Because then at that point, the system would be failing. And that was definitely put out there that, yeah, we do have the bandwidth as long as we have the time to respond, and that, we don't have that 200-300 calls per week or 100 calls per week.
Yeah, I wasn't referring to the enforcement per se. What I was thinking was, if we're going to have a staff getting the application saying this person is approved and then giving it to the data management company to issue the permit, you're going to have somebody with a pretty decent workload when this a permit program implementation, in the implementation of issuing the permits. So I just want some clarity there, because if the database company is not managing that administrative function, and you're going to have somebody, from the city doing it, or in your case, I think that's what Karen alluded, you're going to have, quite a bit of work to do that, right?
Correct. And that, I think when we get to that, I think that would maybe a discussion that, could be had, because one of the the possible features of this program is, if I have a driver's license, Mario Garcia, I have a vehicle registered to Mario Garcia, my registration is to Mario Garcia at 123 Visitation, I can almost see the system could say, or someone on their side automatically issue that and go, there's no discussion there. Now, if there was a possibility where there's an anomaly in the application, they can kick that over to us. Be like, okay, we can handle one-on-one stuff that we can compare easily. Anyone can do it. But once we have an anomaly, let's say, hey, my name is Mario Garcia. I live at, 452 Mendocino, but my vehicle is now registered to Hertz. And then in the comments, work vehicle. That can be kicked over to us. And then those we can handle on a case-by-case because then we're only handling anomalies. But in terms of the mundane matching up, I think a technician on their end can do that. So that would alleviate that issue. So I don't think we're going to get a lot of anomalies, especially if the program is spelled out. Your name, your registration, your address, it's easy.
No, I mean, that's excellent. And, and I guess going back, so this could also be phased, you could provide a period to, to execute this permitting issue, like 1 or 2 months. So, you give yourself some time. But so when we talk about the database, so let's let's get a little deeper on that. How are they going to build their database? Because the DMV records are not public, right? So is that something that they open up a website and then there's some sort of campaign and saying, this is the website from this company that is going to create a database to issue a parking permit, and then everybody goes over there and provide the data. I mean, I just trying to understand
I would think they must have that figured out because they do this statewide. So I mean, I get what you're saying, but getting into the weeds of how they're actually doing it, I think we can cross that bridge when we get there. But I'm sure they have a mechanism to have all our records verified. I just can't imagine that they wouldn't. I don't think we're asking any questions they haven't asked before. So I would think they have this figured out.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's a legit question, but you're right. I'm sure they have that figured out. But if you could get us the answer.
Did you watch the demo that we sent you?
They didn't really talk about that, but I'm just trying to, I don't know if somebody has any other comment in that regard, but if you, just back that question, and if you give me that answer and I will relook at that video, I'm just curious how they're going to come up with that.
That's the $5,000 though, right? That pays for the database. That piece you're saying? Okay, yeah. And then there are other companies as well. This is one option, but sort of maybe that's probably the option that sort of gets, that could get dug into maybe more too.
Okay, so if we don't have any other, question in terms of, what the meeting, in terms of what we shared with you guys, what the meeting was about and what, the expectation of the consensus was to go this direction and so forth. I guess we could probably dive into how this is going to, now that we have this meeting and narrow down some of these options, how is this going to play out in the near future and in the long future? So this is also going to impact the, the report that we're writing that basically is going to be a reflection of all the research that we've been doing for quite some time, researching different cities. Because, the idea with that report is to present it, to have it there for council, and then when they come and debate this, they will have all those different resources, to better inform them and to go the direction that they need to go. So this here is, is going to help us drafting that report. So in terms of timeline, which is a very good question, and then the workload for the committee. So in terms of timeline, can you talk a little bit about that, Karen?
Because we were moving forward with the 6 options and trying to bring it to council in November, then we just, staff felt, I think you guys agreed, it was too many options. So we did this meeting with the liaisons just last week. And one liaison attended. I mentioned that, okay, they're meeting tomorrow, they're meeting November 16th. Their meeting in December is just to select who is mayor, and they always want that to be a light meeting. And then they meet again in January. So I said to Councilmember Mackin, I think considering this information, I think we need to bring this to you in January. And she said, yeah, fine. There's not really an opportunity before that. November 16th is much too soon for staff to have that ready.
So, based on this, the report got trimmed, and that's, a living document and being adjusted and so forth. But the committee is going to, they're going to share the report. I'm going to talk about the report. But right now, this meeting took place not that long ago, so I guess staff hasn't had the chance to really, make those adjustments. So there's not much to share. Is that the case?
I mean, we got feedback at the last meeting about the content of the report. It was in a pretty draft form at that time. So, Tomas has started incorporating that. I think it's your option if you guys want to look at what we have ready to bring to council and kind of review like you did last year in April and kind of make sure that you feel like we hit all the important points or whatever, then we can bring it back to you.
Yeah, kind of what I'm envisioning, since I'm going to be working on it a lot, is, as was stated at the liaison meeting, going to provide the background that's a culmination of all the data we collected, all the information we've collected over the past year it's been, and but the really and provide all those figures and provide the contractors we talked to. But in reality, there's only 2 realistic options, or the only realistic option is BPD enforcing. So the report will be trimmed in that way, and then there'll be the information that we've collected prior as a sort of background. But realistically, like you said, it's going to be trimmed down. It's going to be a lot more simple. And there's also edits to consider from last meeting where Linda stated a few formatting errors and wording errors. But that's kind of what I'm seeing. That's kind of what my job for myself is to incorporate what I just stated into the report now.
And I'm going to say what Darius mentioned before was, I mean, we have maybe slightly different interpretations. I think I got the sense that from that liaison, again, not the full council, that they want that cheaper option, and she didn't feel like the rest of the council was going to bite on the more expensive one. So it was kind of like, do you want to do some targeted streets? Do you want to try to do all of Brisbane with police enforcing on a complaint basis with displayed permits? And these other ways to do the enforcement are this and this, but it's not, we're not anticipating they're making a choice to do that at this meeting. So it's, it could be wordsmith that if they said, oh no, we found some money under a rock and we want to do that, they could decide at the meeting.
Yeah, the background information would be there as, here's if we have our little experimental period of 1 year and we find out that it doesn't work or whatever, then we have all this information that we presented as potential add-ons if they got to that point. But realistically, we want the cheapest option.
But we're not defining an experimental period.
Right, okay, right. Yeah. That was part of
the discussion too.
Yeah, so definitely, we want I think it has been expressed that the committee wants to be engaged with the report writing and the different sections. In terms of the enforcement, that definitely got trimmed quite a bit, and I think that was a good move. Then we also have the other sections that we learned from other cities in our research, in terms of the application process, all these different caveats for issuing additional permits, caregiver, kids coming from college, that type of stuff. Then we also have some of the stuff that we discussed, work vehicles, leased vehicles versus, regular vehicles or oversized vehicle. So all those sections, we're going to have it in the report, correct?
Not necessarily like that, I don't think, because when it comes to the caregivers situation, the multi-generational emergency, et cetera, it was kind of talked about a lot during the liaison meeting that Colleen wanted to, Councilmember Mackin wanted to keep the guest parking permit also very light, also very loose. So I don't think we were trying to define all of those specifications with our guest parking section. I think all those caregiver and emergency situations that would go under a guest permit as a sort of general template, but not say if there's a caregiver this, if there's an emergency situation this. It wouldn't be like that. As far as oversized vehicles, I could throw that in. It's also part of the existing municipal code, so could refer to it. But I think the focus right now would be the big picture. Is the council interested? These are some options. These are what other cities have done. And I don't know how into the weeds I would get with some of those other items.
You have a question?
Are we going to include a section regarding a public vote?
That's going to be included in the sense where when it came to the discussion of trial streets or not all of central Brisbane, that the city engineer would have the ability to initiate a ballot or, for the area in question. But besides that, I don't know if we thought the central Brisbane would be a vote.
If I might make some comments on that. This is a major change, and we are assuming that it will be for good in terms of reducing or freeing up parking spaces on the street. Still, that being the case, our current civil code is written such that if one block wants to have a parking permit program on their block, they basically go through a voting process. Now, 70% is a high threshold. Maybe it should be just 50%. Regardless, one block in our current civil code, a single block that wants a permit program is given a choice. And yet we're sitting here saying, or it is being advocated that a parking permit program for the entire city will not be given a public choice. And I think that's a mistake.
I think part of I don't want to say making up for that, but I think that's part of why the rollout was presented in such a soft manner, because you're right, that is just sort of a decision being made on behalf of a lot of people. But that is what council occasionally does, and I think that's part of the reason why Colleen was emphasizing this would be for all residents of Brisbane. This would be $10 to $20. This would be, figuring things out. But I understand what you're saying.
Thank you.
So just to be on the same page in terms of the report, when do you anticipate, providing you with the draft that you have?
December meeting, or when I send prior.
From my end, I would like to, see it in a timely manner, so I could make my suggestions. Because my understanding is so in the past, the staff has written sort of like a memo report or more like concise and very targeted consensus on decision that was gathered, the committee, more like an executive summary of what we've been talking. But, what the committee as a whole, what we've been anticipating is having a report with the captures. So this is probably different from, the other. So I'm looking at this in two different ways. So one way is to a report that reflects the research that we have done, and that's going to provide a robust different options when council has a decision, and then more of a executive report that is very narrow and targeted, based on a specific decision that the council seems to have taken more concrete steps. I mean, that's the way I see it. I don't know if you want to respond to that, Karen, just to also the other members.
Yeah, I mean, we haven't gotten super far on it, but as I talked to you about earlier today, there's a format for a staff report that is, what are the council goals? What's the purpose? What's the recommendation? What's the background? What's the discussion? What's the fiscal impact? So that's the staff report. It can have then further detail goes in attachments. So what you brought us from the San Mateo, the guidelines, if you want that document and that detail, that would be an attachment. And I did hear from Councilmember Mackin, keep it high level, keep it high to mid-level. If they want to know that detail, it's in an attachment, not up front, because it kind of obfuscates what the main decision points are. Because the council, I don't imagine they should be the ones discussing, well, what if, I mean, they might, but what if that car is registered to the parent and not the child? That's staff level stuff to handle. So it can be in the attachment, but it isn't the main decision that they're making.
No, I think that clarified things for me. So in my mind now, that's clear. There's going to be like a staff report, and then we're going to have more of a research as an appendix. And I think, that to us, at least to me, is important because, the committee did a lot of work and we researched different cities. And so when council meeting, when council has their meeting and wants to make decision, they will have the resources, to go into the different sections and to get informed. So that's good.
So the San Mateo guidelines, let me also say, probably the map of the suggested targeted streets, council suggested targeted streets. And we have the table that was the most recent cities that we researched and the way they implement, the way they address some of the issues that came up last year in April. I think that would be a good attachment,
We have different appendices too.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
How long would a target, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I guess, sorry, I want to, loop back about part of the voting, not voting, voting is the wrong word, but sort of, I don't want to seem like we brushed apart that piece of the voting process. I think part of it was targeted streets is not necessarily defining. We might define the map was nice that we had sort of the suggested streets, but there was also a suggestion that you could maybe send out a survey and within regions there could be, different regions or perhaps council identifies other, districts as well, not districts, but like neighborhoods that could be part of that. So I think that, yeah. Just thinking back to that piece.
Right. I don't think the council's
Gonna get that
speak for them, but
granularity? Yeah.
have the appetite to just say, we are doing this and
Yeah.
not. I think they do want to do a survey. The feedback we're getting from Councilmember Mackin, and she talked to a peer in San Bruno, and they have a similar program on their an ordinance on their books, is that nobody's come forward and that people have brought it up here, but they haven't come forward because it's hard to be the one saying, hey, I want to do this in my neighborhood. You don't know if you're going to upset a lot. So if the city sends something out, hey, do you want to participate? That's going to be a lot easier. We may find that nobody does, but we may find that a lot of streets are interested. So, I think they have the option not to, but I'd be surprised that they didn't want to do it that way.
Yes. Okay. How are we doing time-wise? 7:32. Remind me what time the meeting ends?
8 is ideal.
8 is ideal. Okay. So we we covered the So for the near future, if Tomas, if you could send that report sooner, that would be greatly appreciated. I know you guys have a lot on your plate, but that will give us, at least give us some time to look at it and and make suggestions or just give you a thumbs up. And then the what's going to be the target goal is to sometime in January for this to be presented to council, right?
Yeah, and to clarify, they have canceled they meet the first and third Thursday. They're set up also with MCTV, so they can do other Thursdays, but sometimes Planning Commission meets on those alternate Thursdays. So they canceled January 4th, just because it's the holidays, I think. So they have a meeting January 18th. That's the only one in January. Then I believe they would have a meeting the first Thursday in February. So again, the mayor sets the agenda. Staff will say, we have this item, we're ready, we'd like to put it on the agenda, but the mayor could say, that agenda's too full, do it in February. So it's not up to me, but that'll be the goal, because that's the next full meeting that we could be ready for.
Does that give us enough time to review so we would see the draft at our next meeting? Presumably, we'd have some input, likely some changes, and then we would see it again in January. Is that enough time? And
Do we meet in January? I guess the first, what's the holiday schedule there for January? Or is it doesn't fall on a holiday, I guess, right?
Checking,
I don't know why.
good question. January 3rd, it is not a city holiday, so, yeah, I would say it's up to you guys.
Yeah.
I guess at this point, we should count on meeting in January.
Maybe we see how it goes in December and you guys can decide at that December meeting.
But in terms of your question, Pat, so right now that's the target goal to for Karen to have this report ready and presented on January. But realistically, it's not a set goal yet. So, and also on December we might have a better understanding how this report is structuring, and then we're going to have another opportunity on January, and so we could sort of play by ear, right? Okay. All right. Any other questions?
Not on our part.
Okay, so why don't we? I think it would be a good idea to move on to the to keep moving on with the agenda. New business, we have none. Staff updates.
Oh, it's gonna surprise me.
We locked down the date for the visitation project. It's going to be starting on could be like a day or two off the 11th, November 11th. The upper visitation overlay will be beginning radius earthwork. I think we mentioned this last time, but now we have the set date. We went around notifying businesses, letting them know that the work's going to be taking place. And yeah, we're really excited about this one because, it's just the center of our city, really, Visitation Avenue. So,
There's two segments, the upper from San Benito down to Mendocino, and then the lower Mendocino down to San Francisco Avenue. And for 4 days, not necessarily consecutive, there'll be no parking. You'll be able to drive through, but no parking on Visitation. That's why we split it up into an upper and lower, and highly inconvenient, but it's gonna look really good when it's done. You want to talk about Silicon Valley Bike Coalition?
Yeah, we connected with through Cliff Florikowski. Actually, we connected to the Silicon Valley Bike Coalition, which they do what it sounds like. They try to promote other alternative uses of transportation. We met with them today, and then they kind of, it was a good meeting because we made contact with them. We let them know that we're interested in future projects. They let us know that in next year, this is just an update for us, and it's probably in the news, but they're going to have a program where you can, I believe, rent a bike from city to city. So say you're going from Colma to Daly City, it's going to be and we didn't get the full details, but some sort of system that aims to connect cities through biking. And we expressed they're going to doing a pilot for that in 2024, and we expressed interest of keeping up to date with that and just keep staying in the loop and being aware of how we can apply this to Brisbane.
And they help with community engagement, and they do bike repair clinics. So they're a resource that want to be like an advocate for riding bikes and, last mile to transit, whatever the case. So it was good to make that connection, make the acquaintance. Crocker Trail, the ribbon cutting. Didn't see you guys there, but it's open and functional, and should go take a walk on it.
Yeah, I heard there were some horse. So I guess it's not horse-proof.
There is no code prohibiting horses, but I guess that is getting rushed onto the council agenda to have actually, a law in the books that says you can't ride on the trail because their hooves are damaging the new trail surface a little bit worse than the old surface, and they're not getting picked up after, so it's unideal.
So the contractor, they don't have like an option to make it horse-proof? Because I mean, that if I had a horse, that would be a nice trail to go on a horseback ride.
Well, the goal was to keep
They
it.
have used it for years.
Yeah, right.
It is used by horses, yes.
Right. The goal was to keep it somewhat natural originally and to allow water to percolate so there weren't like stormwater pollution impacts. So that's why it wasn't an asphalt surface or something like that.
I guess we don't have that many horse advocates here.
Oh, another quick small one. On Bayshore Boulevard, we ordered 2 electronic speed signs going in both and north and south direction, obviously to make people conscious of their speed. So, and we ordered that. It's like 3 weeks away. They said that we have these 4 to 6 weeks to ship, and that was about 2 weeks ago. So,
Where will those be installed?
they're right by the trailer park. I wish, so pretty much on either side of the trailer park, but not precisely, staggered a bit, but on either, right by the trailer park.
Great.
So I also, they're doing that big construction on the off-ramp to Bayshore North. I don't know if you could provide an update as what will be the target completion date, because they've been at it for a while. And they're adding, and I see some construction on the sidewalk on Bayshore that goes into where the old VWR building used to be.
That one, neither of us review permit applications, so, if you ask us ahead of time, we can get updates at the meeting, but I am sort of aware, just from being around it, that I think Amazon is doing a warehouse at the old VWR location, so they did tenant improvements, and they were required to do, I don't know if they were required to, or they wanted to put a sidewalk along VWR down to their property, so I don't know the details, timeline or anything.
It goes to the Samtrans bus stop and then around the corner. I mean, Amazon's probably
Oh, you know what? I think it's supposed to be as close to ADA as possible. They have steps. The prior use had steps up to the stop, but then this is for ADA access or better. It may not meet all the grades, but.
It's a welcome thing. I like that. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think we talked about sidewalks on Bayshore, but on the other side, but having it on that side for the bus stop is a good thing.
I don't know about the one in the south end of Bayshore. I'm not familiar.
No, I'm saying that in the past, we have talked about.
No. I mean, you were saying there was another permit work going on.
Oh, no, I was talking about the big construction work that has been going on for quite some time on the off-ramp from 101 North into Bayshore.
The overpass, you mean?
The other pass.
I'm not familiar. Is it on the Caltrans property?
It's part of the.
The flyover?
Work seems to have stopped a couple weeks ago. There haven't been, I mean, we go over that several times every day, and multiple times sometimes. There haven't been workers on it in a couple weeks, I think. But there's still barricades.
Yeah, it's still barricades.
Unfinished.
So I'm just wondering if they have, if you guys get updated with timelines, just to have an idea. The holidays are coming in and so forth.
I don't know. We can look into it and give you an update to what we know, but we don't, the only teeth we have about a contractor who takes out a permit is the permit has a certain period of time. They don't, need to abide by a schedule that they give up. We don't have a contract with them, just a permit for a period of time.
Okay. All right. So any other questions on staff updates or more updates?
No, I was just saying to myself, if they needed a permit, if they're touching our property, if they're just working in their right of way, nice of them to let us know, but they don't have to abide by rules that we make.
Yeah, I mean, in general, when there's like PG&E work and stuff like that, they hand flyers, but definitely this is like an exit of the freeway. I don't think they have to do that, but the exit has narrowed significantly, and they've been doing it for a while. So we're just curious, what's the time frame and stuff like that.
Isn't Caltrans required to give public notice of projects like that? I mean, they did certainly for the repaving of 101. And aren't they required to at least notify local governments in the surrounding vicinity?
They might have information on their website.
I'm sorry?
They might have information on their website. I believe they post about projects that are going on.
Yeah, and in terms of like major notifications, if there's an impediment of ingress and egress, then they would have to notify the city. You're right, the work seemed to have stopped. If you have a vehicle high enough that you can see the work that's currently being left there, it looks like, from what I can speculate, I'm not a contractor, I've never done that kind of work, but rebar is in, they may be reconstructing that wall, and I can almost guarantee it's going to be a cement wall. So they may be going through this process to get permits for a possible, impediment or stopping of traffic while they can pour that in there. So that may be to come. That's why they haven't done anything, because they have to first notify us if they are going to stop any traffic or have any, flagmen out there. But the initial work that was being done, they weren't stopping traffic. They were just limiting the roadway. So I have a feeling that that's why it stopped, because now they have to go through the red tape of notifying and coming up with detours if need be, or shutdowns. So I'm speculating, but it looks like that's the final piece of the work, is to reconstruct that wall.
That makes sense. Okay, so let's move on. So if there's no more questions on staff updates, let's move on to chair and committee members matters, and I have something to share with you guys. So I don't want to get too ahead of myself, but but I want to say that the residential parking permit program, as you could see from the discussion that we're having, is more targeted. Staff is writing a report. There's going to be some appendices of all the work that we have done, to have this robust report for City Council when the time comes for them to make their final decision. And so I think so. I'm going to finalize the conversation with Council Colleen in the regard if we could start bringing some other agenda items, and then obviously keep having the residential parking permit program, but it's not going to take the whole hour per se. And one of the things, so if that's is, if we get the okay from them, obviously what needs to happen is we have to have a meeting with them, and they have to, agree and officialize our new agenda. So one of the things I wanted to do is, if Tomas can put on the screen, this is what we have, the points that we had talked about before.
Yeah, the
And-
year's wrong, but it's. I just got to change the year, but it's the one we've been looking at most recently. Typo there, 2022.
Yeah, so, in that year, we were getting ready to talk, to build our agenda and talk about it, but then we were told just to concentrate on the residential permit parking. So this is what we have, the points that we wanted to discuss and bring to the liaison to approve. So wanted to, maybe you could either email it as a refresher, or we could see it over here. If there's anything else that you guys would like to add or talk about, let us know. Right now, this is not an official agenda item. I'm just bringing it as a chairman item. So we cannot delete or add of anything, but we could just briefly talk about them. So point number one was review parking issues, so we've been talking about that. Investigation potential for one-way street, that was the one point that we had talked about. I don't know if this is going to come back. Emergency vehicles access, a study pedestrian pass. And then we had a speedy on the street of Norris Ridge. Review. Are you sure this is the one? It seems a little.
It was in my, it was in, it's the one I had in my 2023, or February 23 email to you guys, so I think so, but.
Okay, because it seems a little outdated.
If I can dig a little further, but I went back to that, to earlier this year, went to what I sent you guys, and this is what I pulled up.
You might be right, it's been a while. So, we had stuff about bike lane initiative encouraging bicycling, review existing shuttle service, and evaluate opportunities for improving service to and from Sierra Point. So, this is a side matter, but in the Chamber of Commerce, we had a presentation from a transportation group, and I'm going to provide more information about that. But one of the things that came up is Brisbane is one of the city that they get the least public transportation service. And so that's good. That's good to know, because we definitely have room to improve that. Receive and comment on Baylands transportation circulation plans or other proposal referred by the Director of Public Works or City Manager. And, we also have that meetings that theirs was attending. So there's stuff there's a lot of stuff that we had in our agenda, and feel free if you feel strong about another point to bring. And, like I said, we're going to have this conversation with council to see if we could start talking about other matters.
Yeah, I'm sure Councilmember Mackin will have suggestions too, probably. I'm sure she has ideas.
For sure, yes. Any comments? And overall, I don't know how you feel about having that, start transitioning to adopting more agenda items besides the permit parking program. You guys feel it will be a good thing, or you guys feel we should continue and with the parking permit program?
Well, I think we need to finish the parking permit program before we start anything else. But I think we should start before its parking permit recommendation is finished. I think we should start putting our ideas together as to what we think is important to work on next, and start talking about that. Maybe not make any decisions, certainly not working on anything yet. And then for you and Darius to meet with the liaisons, or however that happens, to make sure our prioritization is.
Yeah, I agree. I think next meeting probably still should focus on parking update stuff, and then, from there. Maybe in the meantime, we can think about additional ideas to kind of discuss next meeting.
If you think you want to edit this list, we can put it on the December agenda to discuss
To discuss
draft
that
work
further,
plan.
and maybe make sure this is the most because I think this is the most updated one, but it has been a long time.
I think it is, but
Yeah.
it looks real dated.
But perhaps that could be an agenda item to discuss next time
Yeah, we can do that.
after the parking permit.
Yeah, good. I mean, that's, I think, definitely we should start making some signals or some move to start getting onto more of a standard or normal agenda sequence. Okay.
Yeah, we're with you. Yeah.
All right. So with that, what else we have? So our next meeting is going to be December 6th. Any other questions? So we're going to adjourn the meeting. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Happy Thanksgiving, everyone.